Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're a minute or two before the hour, so we're going to wait a minute or two until after the hour to let some other folks join. But we look forward to our conversation this morning around security questionnaires, RFPs, and revenue challenges that the panelists have seen. And we look forward to your attendance today. But just if you don't mind, we're going to spend a few minutes letting others join because we have a number of folks joining today. Again, we will start at just a few minutes after the hour. We look forward to all of you attendees, and we thank you very much for joining today. Just want to give a minute or two for other folks to have a chance to join the discussion. And then we will certainly get started at just a minute or two after the hour. And as we're waiting for others to join, I'll maybe go into the agenda slide just to share with you a sneak peek of what we'll be talking today. It's going to be a wonderful conversation, and we're going to allow you to enter into the chat questionnaires. Any questions that you want to ask, the panelists will actually answer those. So we'll take your questions, we'll answer them to the best of our knowledge, and we'll have a facilitated conversation that I'll try to be the moderator today and make sure that we have a nice, fast-paced environment for everyone. So I'm just going to go one slide up to the overview, and we'll get started in actually 1 minute. Again, the topic today will be security questions, RFPs, and revenue challenges. It's a great topic, something of huge interest to any startup organization, anybody in the B2B space that is selling into mid-size or large-size customers. And so we're really looking forward to both the agenda and also to introducing the attendees today. So at 2 minutes past the hour, I am going to get started because we do have a good and growing attendee list. First thing I want to do is welcome you all. Thank you very much for attending. We appreciate your time. We'll be on and to the point, and we'll try and keep this fast-paced so you get a lot of information crammed in a short period of time. I'll start with introductions, and then I'll facilitate a conversation between our two panelists today. I'm very happy to have them both on board today. So Sam Sunderaraj is one of our guest panelists. He is the VP and head of go-to-market at Falkon. Sam, do you want to share a little bit about your background, if you don't mind?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So I am Samuel, and my background is leading early stage go-to-market teams at startups. So coming in and scaling the sales team as there's product market fit, and we've defined segments to go sell into. So primarily mid-market and the enterprise. And currently I am the head of go-to-market at Falkon, which is an early stage operational analytics platform backed by Greylock. And Falkon is really focused on selling into the mid-market and enterprise customer base. We are still early in the journey, and yeah, excited for this discussion today.
Samuel, thank you very much. Really glad to have you on. And Justin Beals is CEO and co-founder of StrikeGraph, who I work for. Justin has a great background. Justin, why don't you go into that a little bit? What brought you into the CEO role and into this conversation around security questionnaires, RFPs, and how to speed up sales cycles?
Sure, Dan. I have really enjoyed a career working in startups and helping to build companies. Normally, my role is as a chief technology officer or leader of the product work. And 2 startups ago, we hit significant headwinds in sales due to cybersecurity compliance. And ever since then, I've been terribly interested in the problem, and it led to founding StrikeGraph and helping companies of all sizes solve compliance issues and really monetize their cybersecurity practice.
I appreciate that. And that does talk about a little bit about your experience and background with cybersecurity. We'll get back to that in a second, but I'm going to turn it over to Samuel. Samuel, how would you share a little bit about your background? Because you actually also have background in cybersecurity and the challenges it poses.
Yeah, actually, I've also worked for an organization called Extra Hop Networks, which is now a leader in network detection and performance management. So I've seen it more. I've also seen it, going into accounts and selling on the premise of why organizations need to have a better cybersecurity strategy, but also have worked with having sold into enterprises, both mid-market and also have talked to procurement managers about their cybersecurity policies and really have gotten a pretty solid understanding of how each organization, there's variable factors like vertical and segments in terms of how they've used cybersecurity and what's a must-have versus, hey, nice to have, right? So, but yeah, that's my experience, both as in terms of a seller, but also having sold for companies that have implemented a cybersecurity and also have experienced the frictionless sales motion, right, by having compliance. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And so we have the background very valuable from both the CTO perspective and the CRO or head of go-to-market, VP of sales perspective. So today, when you ask questions, folks that are attending, feel free to also address them from a CTO perspective or from a VP of sales perspective, and we'll try and have that gentleman lead the response. But Justin, you've seen this. How has the security questionnaire process affected your business in the past, and what are you trying to do to solve it today? And then we'll take Samuel's experience afterwards.
Yeah, this is a massive personal pain point for all CTOs. And just to kind of describe the scenario, essentially you're in sales motion, you get some type of verbal from probably a customer you would really like. And the very first thing that procurement sends over is a security questionnaire. And I've seen ones as long as 600 questions. And so as a CTO, first off, you don't have all the answers to begin with. And so it winds up being a 3-day exercise and going to your teammates and gathering up all the correct responses. And not only that, the very next deal that might come across the line is gonna get the same general set of questions. And so what you find is that there's just literally no scale, and that's an anathema to any CTO. Because you just can't scale your time with the sales momentum that the sales leaders need. It's super painful. Oh my goodness, it's really a struggle, and it just requires a lot of time and disruption. Yeah.
So being a sales leader here and wanting to hear Samuel's experience on the sales side, what are your thoughts on the other side of the fence, Samuel?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where I've been frustrated by folks like Justin in the past, where it obviously in sales and revenue functions, you want to close deals, and it's not just getting the yes, right? Then you have procurement, you have legal, and a big part of this is compliance, right? Most organizations today, at least that's my experience. And then one of the things that I've always wondered about is, man, where's the empathy from the CTO, right? The sales team brings you a deal, and there's no empathy because they're like, well, go convince them to do this without compliance. Well, that can't happen anymore, right? And so I recommend if you're going to whatever stage you're in, right? I think compliance should be very much part of that discussion, right? When you're building product and you're thinking about raising money, allocate a certain amount of funds, or think about it as you're embarking on your journey when you're starting the company, when you've got product, when you start selling to customers, right? That's going to come up, and don't be surprised when you've got this nice deal running and you're talking about it in the board meeting and investors or potential investors. Last thing you need is that deal to go south, all because of a compliance issue.
Yeah, it's a passionate issue for me too. I'm not going to chime in on every question, but this one especially, because prior to StrikeGraph, I was at companies where I was leading a team, and our quarter hinged on one big deal. And those deals got stuck in security questionnaire land or InfoSec, and us waiting to respond and having to go back and forth. And I always wondered, would there be a better solution? This is not a spiel, but Justin, I'll give you 30 seconds to answer. Does StrikeGraph have something to help companies with that?
Absolutely. And this is a major innovation in the space. So our customers essentially can submit the Excel spreadsheet, PDF document, whatever form the security questionnaire came, to the StrikeGraph platform. The StrikeGraph platform breaks down each question in the questionnaire, and it uses natural language processing and AI to find your cybersecurity controls and answers those questions with your own cybersecurity controls. So you can go back to the potential customer with every question answered with your habits and practices. Now, you can do this before you've achieved an audit. That's absolutely fine. You don't need to achieve a SOC 2 to use security questionnaire AI system on StrikeGraph. And it's literally taken the answering of security questionnaires out of the CTO realm and put it back in the hands of the sales team.
Well, that's great to hear, because I want to go back to revenue generation in this topic. Samuel, your experience as a revenue leader, this is talking about growth, right? And you're responsible for it. What do prospective customers want to know about your company in order to grow your revenue?
Yeah, I think obviously organizations, when you're doing business, people want to know the vision of the company, the team behind the company, and once you're past all of that, right, and they like your product, right, you're down the sales path. I think having a certification, in this example, I'm going to say SOC 2, I think communicates multiple things to a company or a prospect, especially if they're in the mid-market and enterprise. What it indicates to them is that you are serious about taking on this segment, right? Especially if you're a startup, right? And you've got 10, 15, 20 employees, and you're convinced and convicted about, the solution you're bringing to market is going to be very valuable. That's one part of the story. The other part of the story is, what do you have in place to go take on this segment, right? And I've always considered having, being certified, or at least having something in progress, is a strong signal to your prospects that this is a market that you are wanting to come in. And if you have incumbents that are bigger than you, you are prepared to take them on, right? And that's, again, part of the revenue strategy. That's revenue acceleration. That is making sure the champion at the company that you're selling into, basically, it's part of their ammo to go to procurement, right? And go to their VP or EVP and say, hey, I know these folks are a startup, but here's all what they have, and they're actually a viable player. And part of showing viability is compliance.
Yeah, and I always boil it down to building that trust.
Yes.
Trust super fast. I mean, Justin, is that one of the reasons you started StrikeGraph?
Absolutely. Trust is the most effective sales tool I've ever had in helping grow the startups that we work at. And just remember that trust is an efficiency issue. So what you want to be able to do is create trust efficiently. Many people might be able to create trust over a year relationship, slowly growing, something more akin to a services business. But you need someone to have trust really efficiently. And that independent third-party review of cybersecurity practices by a SOC 2 auditor and ISO 27001 certifier is the most efficient way to communicate that trust.
Yeah, it really is. And so I want to go back to a topic again. I've said this one's near and dear, but Samuel, I'll let you respond. And you don't have to give specifics, because I don't want to put you in a confidentiality situation. But have you ever had a deal that was delayed due to cybersecurity or security questionnaire issues?
Yeah, multiple deals. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of examples, and I'll get very specific here, and lots of learnings from this example, actually. We won the deal, and everything was tracking. I had it was earlier in the quarter, and so I had forecasted the deal and committed the deal, right? Because we thought we had about 60, 70 days to get through legal. Turns out that procurement had a requirement around cybersecurity compliance, SOC 2, right? And the big questionnaire showed up, and then it was, who's going to own this, and really for them, it was a must-have, right? And then what we also found out was that for us to bypass that, not only, well, we had to respond to the questions to the best of our knowledge, but also we had to go, or at least convince our champion to get the necessary approvals, right? And our champion wasn't willing to do that, right? And so at that point, it came down to we eventually got the deal, but it was 2.5 quarters later than when we had committed the deal, right?
Delayed revenue,
Delayed
sometimes lost revenue.
team morale, the rep wasn't happy, right? The other lesson there was how do you get ahead of this, right? Which is we should have, part of qualification, right? We should have coached or at least got that information from our prospect, right? To go back to procurement and say, hey, what are the requirements for you to onboard a new supplier?
Sure.
Right? And so that was a lesson. And then the other example was we were in process of getting compliant, but unfortunately, again, the experience, like we took a long time to get the questionnaire back, and that really irritated our champion, right?
Sure
This
did.
was not even procurement. See, procurement doesn't care when you do the deal and who does the deal when, right? It was our champ. They don't have a deadline, right? They're working with the business buyers. The business buyer who we were selling to, they had a deadline. And so for them, it was a missed deadline, missed project timeline, right? And they had to answer internally, hey, here's why we missed. And the response internally was, well, next time go find someone that's compliant.
And so, Justin, you got it from the other angle. You've probably seen this, but you've also been, I'm sorry, you've been blamed, your CTO, in the past. What are your thoughts?
I'm very compassionate to my sales teams. Maybe I'm unique as a CTO like that, but I want us all to win, and I know both people are a part of it. I do have a pretty good horror story on this. We had an AI product for talent management, and we had won a big deal with LinkedIn. I mean, it was knocking on the door of $500,000 a year. And so we've got a verbal from a business owner, a champion. We're driving the thing, and they're like, "Oh, do you have your cybersecurity audit completed, or you can answer this security questionnaire?" And I did all the work, and LinkedIn came back and said, "Great, but our procurement team is behind, so we won't actually get to look at it for 6 months." So 6 months later, we go back to LinkedIn and say, "Do you get to look at all our answers and the work that we did?" And they're like, "Yeah, it looks really good. But the bad news is corporate has put a pause on all new contracts." We're like, "Oh man, well, wonder why. Hope that comes, back to fruition." And 3 months later, we get news that LinkedIn got bought by Microsoft. So the thing is that like time really kills deals, and we lost out on a huge contract by a couple of months just because some other thing in the universe was happening to this organization that we had no control over.
Yeah, and time does kill all deals. For the next question, if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna switch the order. Justin, I'm gonna go to you. You obviously seem to have a solution for it. We do. How do you think, and how does automating security questionnaires affect the speed to close? That plus compliance in B2B SaaS sales.
Yeah, I think first off is that the person that's motivated to get the answers to the security questionnaire back is the salesperson, often not the CTO. And so by essentially duplicating the CTO's thoughts about how cybersecurity should work into an intelligent system, it will answer those questions as the CTO would for you. So that's an incredible efficiency. Instead of going back and forth, spending 2 weeks trying to get the questionnaire answered, in just a couple of days, you'll have all the answers you need. The second is that our system that answers the questionnaire, because it uses the name and description of your actual cybersecurity controls, there's an immense amount of trust. because you're not just saying yes or no, we do resolve this question. You're saying this is what we have enacted in our practices to resolve that question. So you look like a stronger, more mature organization.
Yeah, appreciate that. And Samuel, as you think about it, automated security questionnaires, how would it affect, or how does it affect B2B sales from your perspective?
Yeah, I think organizations should be thinking automation because you want this to be part of your workflow, right? It's almost like while I'm working the opportunity in Salesforce or any CRM tool, and I move the stage, and if there's a checkbox that says, they need a questionnaire answered, it should trigger workflow or tasks, right, to the CTO or whoever's responsible, right? We try to implement some of that in the previous startup I was working with, but it still wasn't completely automated, right? It was something that we sent an email and people got it, and people responded accordingly. But I think automation could definitely shave off, I would say, a few days off your sales cycle, right? Time to respond. It's such a significant positive experience for any prospect, and I've had prospects compliment our experience there, right? Because they were like, yeah, hey, you guys got back to me in 24 hours, all because we had like an email alias, right? It wasn't even complete automation. It was just an email alias, and then we had someone actually manually send the report or answer the question, right? So I think this should be part of your workflow. If you have a go-to-market team that's selling, and it can definitely accelerate and shave off days off the sales cycle.
Well, yes, and I agree with that, and that's why I flipped it to the next question, which is I think that you're going to be able to allocate resources elsewhere with this automation. Do you see that also coming? Samuel,
Yeah,
I'll go to you first.
Yeah, sorry, for me?
Samuel, yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think having a system to automate this process and well integrated into your workflow, the days of most customers, I would say north of 80%, requiring questionnaires being answered, requiring compliance reports to be issued, it's there, it's here, right? Those days of, well, not everyone requires it, right, are gone. So if you're running a startup and you have a sales organization, or if you have customers in those segments, automation is going to work. So you should be allocating. We're thinking about it. We're early at Falkon, but we're already thinking about it, right? So as we add new team members and grow our presence in the market, I think this is going to be part of it just by the nature of the product we sell, right? We're an operational analytics platform, so we are looking at data and analyzing data. So this is going to be a requirement, and we will be most likely allocating resources.
And Justin, have you seen it at our customers, the ability for them to reallocate resources?
Yes. The number one piece of feedback I hear from our customers having adopted StrikeGraph is honestly that they wish they had just adopted it earlier. that setting up, doing a risk assessment, just the 1 hour risk assessment that automates the control selection for your business. It really fits the cybersecurity practice to what you're doing, and then making that data available to the larger organization in things like AI security questionnaires, or efficiently getting through a SOC 2 audit or ISO 27001 certification. It allows your CTO and your team to focus a little more on your product, with cybersecurity and being ingrained in the fabric of what you do, kind of the culture of what happens. And I also, and so you do pay it a little bit forward, but this is where automation makes StrikeGraph really sing. The secret in non-financial certifications and audits is that $95 billion a year globally is spent on consultants. And what we have focused on is taking so many of the hourly consultant work out of the process by building intelligent platforms that automate you through everything from setup to maintaining evidence issues. That certainly there's some important human in the loop moments, but we can really rapidly get you to the level of trust you need for the revenue goals you're trying to achieve. And that's really important. Those things need to track. You need to track your revenue goals with the compliance expenses. If they're out of whack, you go too hard on compliance before it's needed, it will feel like an inefficient and ineffective system. And if you're too late, you miss a big deal. So.
Totally appreciate that. Very good advice. And so Samuel, I'll turn it over to you. What advice would you give to those just looking into streamlining security questionnaire or compliance practice in general?
Yeah, I think think of this as a must-have, right? It's and be mindful about it and thoughtful, right? Don't. My recommendation is act on it. Build a roadmap, streamline it ASAP, right? Especially if for those on the call that are startups, this is part of the customer experience. This signals seriousness about the market, right? And again, at the end of the day, it's going to accelerate you acquiring customers, right? And so as you think of growth, there is a direct correlation between, obviously growth and if you're going out to raise more capital. It's a good feeling to get out there and have a process that's very streamlined that impacts your customer experience, right? So my advice to you is get this going ASAP. If you're thinking about even selling into the mid-market, upper SMB, and of course the enterprise, this is a must-have. If you're thinking enterprise, I would say even before you go out there and start prospecting and talking to customers, make sure you have all of this ready.
Appreciate that. Justin, what thoughts do you have on this?
Just a couple more thoughts on streamlining. Honestly, like much of what we've seen happen inside of businesses operationally and the infrastructure they need, there are a couple things that help streamline right off the bat. First is just having a common place where this information can be shared and there's ownership and there is basically a distribution of the responsibilities throughout the organization and transparency of what that distribution looks like. That's a little bit of work up front, but it's a massive streamline on the back end because the salespeople know who might be handling a security questionnaire issue or where you're at in your cybersecurity journey. So you can say, oh, this year it's on our roadmap to get an audit completed. So the next thing that's, I think, really important to streamlining the cybersecurity practice is before you ever go for an actual certification, if you just get some of these good habits rolling, it'll feel very streamlined to implement new habits. So the worst possible thing actually is to have a big change management project, to implement good cybersecurity because there's a big deal on the table. That's the worst possible situation. So streamlining means making little investments in these cybersecurity practices for your revenue, for your sales, all along the way.
Really appreciate it, Justin. We did have a couple questions come in, and if anybody wants to send additional ones, now is the time to certainly send questions in, and I'll try and get them answered, all of them today. So from the Q&A, I'm going to leave it open on this one because it wasn't specified to go from a VP of sales or head of go-to-market strategy or CTO. But the first one, what can I tell a company if I don't have a compliance program / SOC 2 report? Sam, you want to go with that?
Yeah, I think my recommendation is identify what their requirements are to onboard a new supplier, ahead of time, right? So it's one of those things that you want to know. I think the mistakes that I've made in the past is, I've gotten down to sales cycle, right, and then realize. So if you don't have a program, if you're thinking about it, right, try to make that part of your qualifying process, right, and then get your champion involved, right, and let them know that this is in your thinking. You're not there today, but you're talking to folks like StrikeGraph, right? And if you are, at least get a letter from someone like StrikeGraph. And what you need to show is, hey, I'm trying to initiate this, right? I'm not there, but I'm trying to initiate this. And I think that's the best way. And that has actually worked well for me in the past. But number one is make it, if you don't have it, right, make it part of your qualification process to understand the customer requirements, and then get your champion involved. Don't wait till the end.
Yeah, and Justin, I want to ask you the next one. So minimum compliance program, any advice on at least getting set up? If someone's not ready to get the full SOC 2 audit done on paper, is there something they can do to get started?
Absolutely. There's a lot that can happen in between getting initial customers onboarded and where that audit is. And I think to piggyback on what Samuel said, the first thing is just have a good roadmap that you're communicating to potential customers that you're thinking about this and this is where you're at on the roadmap and you're accomplishing it. And StrikeGraph certainly helps advise our customers on what that roadmap should look like. Now, I have closed fairly sizable deals, although it took a long time in procurement as a CTO helping our team with just a good set of policies, procedures, and our controls, and then a narrative about our system and a security review with that team or security questionnaire. So it is possible to kind of step this thing through. But the truth is, those controls that you define, the policies you develop, you want them to be in service of that later certification. Because what you're going to commit to the customer is that in the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to complete a SOC 2 audit.
Wow, that's interesting. And a question just came in on that topic, which I'm going to have Samuel answer. So I think the question really is, so yeah, that's the CEO of StrikeGraph speaking. Samuel, from outside of StrikeGraph, do you see this for other companies that that's going to help them? Samuel, you're on mute.
Yeah, so you're talking about if I don't have a program.
Well, and I think the question really was prior to the SOC 2 getting the paper,
Yep.
if Justin brought up, if that would help, if you've seen that having a program or getting started help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you have to show again what Justin mentioned. You have to show that there's effort underway, right? That you have a roadmap, there's a plan. Preemptively, I think companies today should have. So there's two parts, right? One is you need to consolidate and know what are, when the questionnaire is coming or comes, right? I need to be prepared to answer those questions, right? Like get on it ASAP, right? And then there's kind of this roadmap thinking of, hey, we are doing this, right? We are talking to people, because what's going to happen is someone is going to ask you for a letter and someone is going to ask you for a commitment, right? And saying, okay, and I've had this happen before, which is we will sign, but you have to commit by a certain date to have your, whether it's a pen test or SOC 2 or whatever, right? At a future date. Two things out of that I've had happen is, okay, yeah, we're confident because we have a roadmap, we're talking to people. So the contract can be signed conditionally and saying, look, there's a commitment made 60 days, 90 days out, right? If you don't, then you're going to have to really, again, really get very specific about, okay, what do you have today and what is the roadmap and what does that look like, and communicate that to your champion. But that's when you want to get ahead and get early, right? And have that conversation.
That's great, Samuel. And the last question I received was from another company. They said they don't have their SOC 2 yet, but they want to know, and Justin, I think I'm going to go to you because you might have the technology. Can they still automate security questionnaires?
Yes, absolutely. So on the StrikeGraph platform, all we need is that initial setup of a risk assessment and just saying what your current cybersecurity practices are, which is a 2-hour process at most. At that point, we have enough data on your cybersecurity practices to automate the answering of AI security questionnaires, or of security questionnaires with our AI.
Appreciate that. And we are about at the end of time. Samuel, any final comments? I did, if you don't mind, have your contact information if anyone wants to reach out to you. And then next I'll share Justin's contact information. Yeah,
have people can reach out and happy to share the script that I've used in the past. And but I highly recommend StrikeGraph. They're doing some great work, and previous startups that I've advised and consulted have been beneficiaries of StrikeGraph's work. And I've seen how deals have been accelerated with some of the effort and some of the work that StrikeGraph has done.
Well, appreciate that. Justin, any final comments from you? And I've got your contact information up there also.
I know that this is painful for sales teams, and there's a lot of resistance as you work with a CTO possibly to get things to happen. I think the advice I would give to CTOs is that this is a very virtuous cycle. You probably always wanted to build a good cybersecurity practice, and rolling one out, getting tested like you do your software, is a good thing to do. Your sales team will help you, provide you cover so you can plan a roadmap for it. And there are tools out there in the marketplace that can help it go faster. Some of them are like StrikeRoute, but some are very open source and free. And we're happy to advise you on what those other solutions are. But this is a good thing to do. Having a standard to measure yourself against makes this all much more worthwhile than it used to be in the past. And having a thought partner, I think, for whatever size issue you're dealing with is always a good choice.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate both your perspectives. If I wasn't able to get to your question today, please do reach out to me at dan.adams@strikegraph.com, and I'll make sure that one of our technical experts answers it for you. But Samuel, Justin, really appreciate the time today. This was a great conversation to be had.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks.
And thank you, everybody that attended. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate all the questions that came in. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to reach a few of them. Bye for now.